Hello, my name's Dean Bates. This presentation is in support of my article which can be found in the 2014 Fad or Solution Research Journal. My article focuses on research surrounding the contemporary management topic of crowdsourcing. My research has a particular focus on enterprise crowdsourcing, which is also known as crowdsourcing of business processes. Is crowdsourcing of business processes a fad or a solution? The term crowdsourcing was coined by Jeff Howell in an article for Wired magazine in 2006. Howell defines crowdsourcing as the act of taking a job traditionally performed by employees and outsourcing it to an undefined, generally large group of people in the form of an open call. Howell coined the term following his observations during a rock tour in the United States. Howell witnessed band members and crew becoming jobbing video editors, record producers, and ad agencies, removing the necessity for professionals in each field. Mark Pekursky coined the term digital natives to describe such individuals. A fall in production costs provided by cheap software and hardware, combined with a rise of digital talent and free distribution channels such as MySpace and YouTube, had created the perfect storm for such amateur contributions. Howell also witnessed the rise of the amateur in other areas. T-shirt startup Threadless created millions in revenue around weekly contests where digital designers submitted T-shirt designs. These designs were voted on with the winning submission going into mass production. Another example is the SETI at Home project, which crowdsourced idle computer time in search of aliens by processing radio wave data received from across the galaxy on millions of unused computers. The online encyclopedia Wikipedia is one of the most successful examples of crowdsourcing, with over 4.5 million articles to date. Howell confesses that he initially underestimated the extent in which crowdsourcing would influence our culture and the economy. Crowdsourcing quickly migrated from digital natives, individuals which grown up using the internet, to the wider population of non-technical individuals. Pekursky refers to such individuals as digital immigrants. This migration was evident as soon as 2008, when snack food manufacturer Walker's Crisps embarked on one of the most successful crowdsourcing campaigns in the UK. Under the slogan "Do as a flavour," Walker's tasked the UK population with inventing a new flavour of crisp. The campaign was partly a serious attempt to gauge the UK's taste in potato snack foods, but also a marketing campaign into itself. The campaign was massively successful, receiving 1.2 million entries. Walker's brand equity increased by 6% and revenues rose by 14%. The general public was asked to vote on which flavour they preferred. Walker's received over 800,000 votes, resulting in the final crowdsourced flavour of Builder's Breakfast. Owing to its popularity, Walkers have continued to run the campaign annually ever since. In recent years, many academics and industry experts appear to have evolved the definition of crowdsourcing. Ross Dawson's definition of crowdsourcing is tapping the minds of many. Dawson's definition notably removes the requirement for crowdsourcing to be in the form of an open call as originally defined by Howell. Dawson suggests that crowdsourcing doesn't necessarily need to be an open call where any individual is free to participate. Dawson discusses closed crowds, where crowdsourcing is limited to a particular community which have an existing relationship to the organisation. This notion is supported by Hall and many other industry gurus, which see a crowd not as a massive external population, but as an organisation's employees, customers and suppliers. Business process or enterprise crowdsourcing is the notion of crowdsourcing business processes which are typically actioned by specified employees or departments within an organisation. Schachter states that the main difference compared to traditional business process management is that a task is not directly assigned to employees, but is posted on a crowdsourcing platform which all members of the organisation have access to. Enterprise crowdsourcing platforms can also be used to receive tasks from the employee crowd in accordance to the business process being crowdsourced by the organisation. A number of technology providers have created platforms which allow organisations to facilitate crowdsourcing of business processes within their own defined closed crowd. These tools typically implement the four-stage crowdsourcing process as defined by Vukovic, a researcher for IBM. Vukovic's research paper entitled Enterprise Crowdsourcing details the 4 stages of crowdsourcing process. These 4 stages are registration and specification, initialize crowdsourcing request, carry out crowdsourcing request, and complete crowdsourcing request. Research for my article focused on organizations which have used crowdsourcing platforms to improve efficiency in their asset provisioning business process, specifically around provisioning of IT assets. An efficient IT provisioning process should ensure that employees have the correct hardware and software they need to fulfill their role within an organization. My experience in the field found that organizations frequently fail to achieve an efficient IT provisioning process. This results in employees either not having access to the resources or assets they need, or IT or facilities management overcompensating and provisioning resources or access to systems the employees do not need. This can be both costly and a security concern. A traditional IT provisioning process is also plagued by other issues, including inefficiencies when a new employee starts at the organisation and recovering assets when an employee leaves. Research for my article looked at enterprise crowdsourcing platforms which set about solving these issues using crowdsourcing principles by decentralizing the provisioning process while providing all stakeholders within the organization greater visibility of the process. This was achieved by providing the crowd of employees with a self-service portal which offered a central catalogue where they can select the assets they need to fulfill their role within the organisation, rather than having assets incorrectly determined by IT or facilities management. The crowd can also contribute to the asset catalogue by adding resources which would have previously been siloed to their department. For example, a document containing tacit knowledge, or a bespoke spreadsheet for calculating financial performance. My research found that organisations seen significant savings through productivity efficiencies by crowdsourcing their IT provisioning processes. 70% of savings came from efficiencies in validation and processing of IT requests. Improvements in software licensing in terms of harvesting and recycling accounted for 16% of savings. A further 8% of savings came from efficiencies in ongoing management in updating deployed applications. 6% of savings were accounted for in the recovery of IT assets at the time of an employee's termination. An increase in employee motivation was surprisingly seen as a benefit also. It is believed that this is a result of empowering the employee crowd to make a self-assessment of the resources and assets they require. This resulted in employees being provided with the tools they believed they needed to fulfill their role, rather than having unsatisfactory and inappropriate assets imposed on them. Research found no evidence that costs increased as a consequence of employees using the facility to request assets or resources they did not need. My research suggests that the approval process of the employee's line manager before provisioning an asset was a sufficient deterrent to prevent this scenario. Equally, it is believed that employees don't wish to be swamped or confused by a vast array of assets or resources which they do not need, and typically do not request resources before they actually need them. Crowdsourcing business processes, such as asset provisioning, to a closed crowd rather than a department silo such as IT or facilities management seems like a daring management strategy, but my research found it to be simply a repurposing of proven crowdsourcing principles within a walled enterprise environment. Crowdsourcing was initially seen by organizations and academics as an evolution of outsourcing, moving tasks performed by employees out to the world's population. However, in recent years, enterprise or business process crowdsourcing has refocused crowdsourcing on the closed crowd within an organization. My article focuses on the single business process of asset and resource provisioning. However, enterprise crowdsourcing principles have already been successfully applied to other business processes. Enterprise crowdsourcing is a maturity of crowdsourcing from a marketing fad to determine crisp flavors to a solution for ensuring the entire crowd within an organization can participate in business processes. I would like to encourage you to read the entire article, which is part of the 2014 Fad or Solution Research Journal. You may ask questions via the journal website at fadorsolution.co.uk/crowdsourcing or via Twitter using the hashtag #FadOrSolution. Another 6 articles are also available in the journal and available on the website and printed editions. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to receiving your feedback and questions.